This presentation is an introduction to the Nevada Site Stewardship Program. It's going to cover the goals, why stewardship, our start, what we do, how to join, state parks, and the transferred land. So the goal of the Site Stewardship Program includes providing an opportunity for volunteers to engage in preserving Nevada's history, to assist public land managers in monitoring their at-risk archaeological sites. By monitoring, we mean recording any changes, and to educate the public on the importance of preserving cultural resources. Why we have stewardship is because over 84% of Nevada has public land, and that leaves millions of acres per archaeologist. Volunteers are able to go out and get to places that our staff isn't able to get to. For example, one special agent for the BLM has up to 12 million acres that they are responsible for. And unfortunately, things like this happen where graves get robbed, people put their campfires too closely to historic structures like this dam, people use graffiti. And so with all of these sites on the vast public lands and the activities that people have engaged in to destroy them, the Caliente Field Office for the BLM and local nonprofits like the Nevada Rock Art Foundation started a stewardship program in 2000. In 2004, there was additional funding in Clark County where a program was developed, and it was ran out of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And then in 2005, the state went ahead and consolidated the stewardship program under the State Historic Preservation Office. And in 2013, when the funding diminished for the Clark County program, it was absorbed into the state program. And in 2018, with transferred lands, we are now adding state parks to the program. We are statewide. We have coverage in pretty much every corner. And we work with federal agencies, state agencies, and counties. We train volunteer site stewards who get that 6 hours of training. They then get introduced to a site or sites. They return to those sites at their own time, quarterly, and they report any changes that they find. And then we provide them other volunteer opportunities that they engage in as well. So we average about 350 active volunteers at a time. The start of the statewide program has trained over 1,500 volunteers, and we cover over 300 different archaeological sites. And if you look at the chart, you can see that 500 site visits, 560 site visits are things that our agencies aren't able to do on their own. So by having these volunteers spread out across the landscape, looking for issues, it helps us make sure that these places are taken care of. So again, we provide training as the stewardship program, not just to new site stewards, but we also engage with law enforcement, people with the Nevada Division of Forestry, so they can recognize sites when they're going in and dealing with fire situations, and now Nevada State Parks. We manage site data, so we ensure that new reports are provided to the land managers, but we compare site changes over time and keep photographic data. For example, on your left, the photo of the floor of a rock shelter is not dug, and on the right, there's two clear places where it's been dug. So the stewardship program keeps that information, keeps the monitoring reports so that we can put these clues together, know when this digging happened roughly, where it happened, and then law enforcement can keep track and look for people who are maybe looting and stealing artifacts. So the way that we're funded is there's historic preservation funds that come down through the National Park Service into the State Historic Preservation Office. And so there's one full-time program coordinator. The other activities that we do are funded through grants, like the Lincoln County Archaeological Initiative grant. And then there's a Southern Nevada Public Lands Management grant. And then we also sometimes are able to make agreements. So the BLM has been able in the past to help program or help pay for a program assistant to do things like push paperwork and help out with all the other duties. Now, we also engage the public by providing outreach materials. We've developed a citizen stewardship program where anybody is able to report damage. You don't have to be a volunteer. And then we also provide workshops for volunteers and for public. All right, so how would an entity get started with the stewardship program? They would contact the program. They would make sure that we have somebody we talk to all the time. They would have sites that they want us to monitor, emergency procedures in place in case something were to happen to a volunteer. They have an agreement for their volunteers, so they're provided insurance while they're out doing their tasks, and has a response procedure for when impacts are reported, because if volunteers report impacts and nothing changes, then you're going to lose those volunteers and the program will not be successful. And then attends trainings for management. So the Nevada Site Stewardship Program provides those management, volunteer, and employee trainings. And we facilitate that volunteer agreement process, the insurance paperwork. And because you've provided, or we have received the information for the sites, we can help match volunteers to appropriate sites. And then we collect all of that data about the volunteers, their monitoring reports and photos, and provide quarterly reports to our point of contact, as well as an annual report. And then we compare that data again to make sure that if any of the impacts are reported, are they new and what severity they are. So we're kind of a buffer between the volunteer and the land managing entity so that they're not constantly being called out for emergencies. We're there to filter it to make sure it's actually a true emergency. And then the most important thing is we maintain the confidentiality of the site. So we have access to the site data, but we only provide that to volunteers and the appropriate employees when needed. Now, both the public land managers and the stewardship program work together to communicate and make sure that the program is successful. We inform the general public about the program and opportunities to get involved, and we support the volunteers and acknowledge their contributions. For example, this is a photo of a picnic in the Reno area, and there's both volunteers and land managers and archaeologists there to appreciate. So for state parks, there's a memorandum of understanding that defines different roles and responsibilities. So the State Park Regional Manager approves participation in the Site Stewardship Program, and they receive annual reports and information when there's a significant impact. Park supervisors supervise all stewardship activities, select an employee to be the State Park Designated Stewardship Coordinator, which I'll define later, and contacts the volunteers annually to make sure that they're remaining in service and update their contact information, and investigate significant impacts. The State Parks Designated Stewardship Coordinator has to be an employee, will organize stewardship activities, selects the sites to be monitored, arranges and conducts site introductions for other employees or volunteers, ensures employee stewards are meeting their monitoring schedule, and is the point of contact for the stewardship program and works directly with the stewardship coordinator. Employee stewards are trained in site stewardship by the stewardship program, and they follow a monitoring schedule and assess the site conditions for natural and human disturbances. So parks that have requirements. Beaver Dam has one site and over 3,000 acres. Cathedral Gorge has 3 sites and 166 acres. Kershaw Ryan, 1 site and over 1,400 acres, and Ward Charcoal, 12 sites with only 658 acres. So these parks all have a requirement because they receive transferred land from the BLM. Site confidentiality is a requirement, and an annual monitoring is required of those sites. And when a significant change has occurred to the sites, SHPO and the BLM will also be notified, and together they're all going to determine if any mitigation is needed. Lastly, any resources that have been collected within the transferred land, those acres, must be donated to a Nevada facility like the Nevada State Museum, which meets museum requirements. So, even though there were many acres that have been transferred, some only had a few sites. New finds are going to occur on the transferred land when you're engaging in an undertaking. If you're going to put in a trail or you're going to be putting in a water tank. If that happens, if you find a new find, all activities will halt in the immediate vicinity of the discovery, and actions will be directed away from an area of at least 100 meters in all directions. And then you have to call in a consulting archaeologist or qualified individual as soon as possible. And SHPO and the tribes and all the consulting parties have to be notified of the discovery within 1 business day. But if you find a new find on the transferred land, when you're not engaging in an undertaking, there's no action that's happening, no road. You're just going out and walking through an area. You have to complete a new cultural resource card. That way management can maintain information on new finds for future issues that may come up. So the Nevada Site Stewardship Program works with all of Nevada's land managers, with the main goal to assist in monitoring at-risk archaeological and historic sites, and we are available for help. I hope you have learned what is the Stewardship Program, why it was created and maintained, how to get involved, and the different roles and responsibilities. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video.